community the required, the desired goal. And one of the events that we have in stock is the Spark series, which is a monthly program for our community members as well as people outside the community. So the idea is to basically bridge the gap between the knowledge gap between most student founders. So there's that knowledge deficit. There's that knowledge deficit that most student founders or people that are just setting out have when they're just setting out. So the idea is to bridge the gap, bring guys that are already doing awesome stuff, bring guys that are already, established founders, guys that are already doing things both locally and beyond the shores of the country and all of that, to come and give insights, to come and teach, to come and pass down this knowledge, to come and pass down their wealth of experience down to student founders like you and I. So initially the event was scheduled to hold on the 10th of this month, but due to the protests that happened, we had to postpone to this particular date. And we are great that there's stability now, even though what we are asking for from the government has not been delivered yet. But we are glad that there's stability and everybody's keeping safe. So just a bit of icebreaker. I would love for everybody to sort of like drop their names and an interesting thing, like a fun fact about you in the chat box, just to sort of like, get to know everybody in the room and, have a feel of what we have in this event. So again, my name is Prince. So fun fact about me, I'll go first. So fun fact about me, I'm basically just catching up with the vibe and cruise around anime. So I'm basically just catching up on anime, watching anime, and all of that. So that's a fun fact about me. So I'd love to get to know more about everybody. So you could just drop messages in the chat box and. Okay, hi, hello, Clinton. The name and fun fact about you. While we are doing that, the session is recorded and it's going to be uploaded on YouTube. So, for the sake of the community members that are unable to join the meeting today, so that they can also catch up with all the amazing insight and nuggets that Yele will be sharing with us today. Hi Clinton. So what fun facts do you want to share with us today? Samuel, who else? Toby, Ifebo, Oluwaleke. What fun facts do you want to share with us today? Okay, so I'm going to okay, so yeah, Clinton, you can
Okay, trying to bring up my video now. Okay, yeah, nice. So I'm Clinton and I'm the update for SparkHub. Well, I'm really excited to be here, although the number is quite, I don't know, because I've sent out a lot of invites already and a lot of people already showed commitment and they are students join. So So I'm quite happy that most of the places where people are not ready and that, despite the fact that it's been quite crazy for the past 2 weeks, and we've been able to keep up our sanity throughout. So, the like Priscilla said, major reason why we have this factory is because as students, entrepreneurs, student founders, we don't really have that enabling community on campus whereby you have this peace of mind that you have resources available to you to thrive while still being a student on campus. Yeah, and then campus is a very remote area. It's a place where you can easily get feedback from customers, right? The close relationship you can really build with your users. So it's best to always start on campus most of the time because you get genuine results and then you can better develop your product. So the Spark is your first virtual event actually. So because we always organize offline events. So this first virtual event is just like bring budding entrepreneurs, new aspiring entrepreneurs that you can gain that industry insight into what to expect in this particular field of trading. And definitely tech is at the frontier of all innovation at the moment in the business space, the entrepreneurial ecosystem. No matter what you want to do, you have to involve technology. You have to, ranging from textiles to high-end infrastructure, whatever you can name it. So you have to have the mindset of adopting tech. So that's the big reason why the future of tech in Africa still has a lot of potential, mainly from fintech down to agriculture, healthcare. So there's still a lot of things that are still yet to be explored, and then people need to gain, you know, they need to gain this insight into how they can get this stuff up. So that's basically what I was saying. And I'm really glad to have it ready. Yeah, so I think the numbers are adding up. Okay, so this the according to agenda, um, really supposed to come on now. I think we just have to do it and record the session and share to our community members that were not available now. So I wouldn't want to waste much of the time. So, so that we can move on to the presentation from our speaker. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clinton. Thank you very much for that good insight into what Spark Hub and the Spark series is about. Thank you very much. So we'll just go quickly into Yele's session. I think the number is adding up now. Uh, okay, so I'll just do a brief introduction of Yele before he comes online. So Yele is the CEO and founder of Bundle Africa, a social payment app for cash and cryptocurrency. Yele is also the founding partner at Microtraction, a platform that funds Africa's remarkable teams with technical founders at early stages. So basically, that's a brief introduction about Yele, and I would love him to unmute his mic and give us the insight.
Thanks very much, Principal. Can everyone hear me? Hello, mic check. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I think what I'm gonna try and do is I guess, talk a little bit more about um, what I've done within the tech ecosystem, and my own, I guess, like lessons or key advice based off, being an investor in the space and also running a tech company. And then I would sort of leave, another 10, 15 minutes for questions. So personally feel that questions, me answering questions would be a lot more impactful than just kind of sharing my own story and advice. So my background didn't start out in tech. I think for a number of you, you're actually a lot further off in terms of your current career and interest and where I was at your age or when I was in uni. I had never heard about startups or computer programming or designing apps until I turned 23. So I was studying medicine in the UK, and I kind of realized I didn't want to practice medicine. And after sort of just doing research and trying to figure out what was interesting, that was when I discovered startups, and it was just really exciting to me because I like the idea of. I've always been interested in entrepreneurship, but I always thought about it from a traditional perspective. So, whether it's, I guess, non-tech businesses, but tech was interesting because of scale and because, using software, you could achieve a lot more with less. So software and tech essentially gave these businesses leverage. So that was what drew me into tech. And I spent a year learning how to code and to design. Today, I don't code at all. I think Leke is, knows me quite well, and I've not done anything from a coding perspective, but I'm still very much active when it comes to UX and UI design. I started the company right out of uni, and that failed. And I always say that that was a badge of honor for me because I went from this medical student that just had an idea to being someone who had picked up, a few key technical skills, and had built relationships with, other developers and designers, and had a better sense of what it meant to start a company. I moved back to Nigeria in December 2015. Didn't know anyone in Lagos apart from a friend, and I was sleeping on his couch. And I was shuttling between Ibadan and Lagos and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. I sent a cold email, and luckily the person responded, and I told them that I'll work for them for free. And that turned into a paid gig in about maybe 6 to 8 weeks, so roughly 2 months. And that company got acquired in 2016. And whilst running Starter, I realized there was a massive gap. That is, so the problem Starter was solving was, at the time, there was lots of information about starting startups and, but it was very kind of Western centric. You didn't really hear insights from people like Mark Essien or people like Jason Njoku, who were the entrepreneurs at the time. I think Paystack was just getting off the ground then. There was no Flutterwave. A bunch of companies that we all know and love didn't exist then. I think PiggyVest had not even started either. And we realized that we needed to sort of create this vehicle to fund entrepreneurs. And that was what Microtraction was. Microtraction wasn't an incubation program or an accelerator program. Essentially, it was an online application for funding. So whether you knew the founders or the partners, you could sort of answer these 10 questions and stand a chance to raise funds. Initially, we were writing 15K checks. Today, we write anything from 25 to 50,000. We are typically the first investor, and we have done about 20 companies. Before we sort of institutionalized Microtraction, we invested in companies like Paystack, Flutterwave, Carrywise, Buycoins, Bitseeker, Wallets Africa, 54Gin, so many companies, a lot of them in financial services. And Microtraction is still ongoing today. We just wrote an investment into a company that is unannounced a few days ago. But in the last, I would say 1 year, or maybe about one year, I guess put back the entrepreneur hat and founded a company called Bundle. Bundle is a social payments app for cash and crypto. It allows users to send and receive Naira or Bitcoin or BUSD or any of the other assets that we support, as well as exchange, or trade between these assets themselves or with cash. In the last 5 to 6 months since we launched in April, we've acquired over 100,000 users, trading about $4.4 million on a weekly basis, and we'll probably hit $50 million for this month. The team we're about 20 people. Most of the team are in engineering, and that's pretty much what I do at the moment. In terms of key lessons, especially as aspiring entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are just getting right off the bat, I would say number one, optimize for if you're not an entrepreneur, optimize for having a skill set. I think the most important one is a technical skill set. So being able to code or being able to design. If you're not particularly technical and you don't really enjoy coding, you can become a UX or UI designer. And if that's not interesting to you, then learn, marketing, right? In my opinion, those are kind of like the fundamental skill sets, and maybe biz dev and sales, right? So as a entrepreneur or future entrepreneur, you want to have a technical skill set, because if you're just the ideas guy, then in my opinion, you don't create that much value. And one thing you learn as an investor is that no idea is special, right? Like no matter how beautiful the idea seems, I promise you that there are 2 to 4 other people building the same idea. Even Bundle is not exactly unique, right? Like there are a bunch of different companies that offer what Bundle does in some way, shape, or form, but we kind of put everything together into a unique package that gives us a bit of differentiation. But no idea is ever unique. So you can't just be the ideas guy. You want to have either you can code, you can design, you're good at marketing and growth, or you're a biz dev and kind of sales person. That's number one. Number two is, in my opinion, optimize for lessons. The odds are whatever business you start today is not going to be successful, right? So I can guarantee that, out of every 20 startups that will be founded by university students or people just out of uni, only one of them will be successful. Maybe even between one and by successful, I wouldn't say like raising, some kind of venture capital, which is not eventual success like an exit. So in the whole of the Nigerian ecosystem, with hundreds of companies that are funded, we've had 2 liquid exits. One was Vanzo to InterSwitch for 40 million, and the most recent one is Paystack to Stripe for $200 million. There are a bunch of smaller exits, but I think anything under 20 million to me is not really a significant exit for the stage the ecosystem is at. So as opposed to kind of just being focused on this idea, in my opinion, optimize for learnings. What would you learn from this experience? And sometimes something that might seem like a toy or like a joke or not a non-serious business ends up becoming something that is truly valuable, right? Someone like Mark Zuckerberg, when he was building Facebook, was building it for his university, and ended up scaling to the rest of the world. There are some local stories like how Jobberman was founded, and even Paystack, right? Like, when Shila talks about Paystack, he just built this thing that could charge cards, and OO was like, this can be a business, and the rest is history. So in my opinion, as opposed to thinking about like, oh, this is the best startup idea, build things build interesting things that solve your problem with really cool people. And by really cool people, I mean, who's that person in your school, in your class, that has complementary skill sets to you, and can kind of, provide the things that the company or idea needs to get off the ground that you don't have. So if you're a designer, you want to work with, someone that is technical and can code, and maybe another marketing person. If you're a technical person, find a designer and, a marketing or sales person. Um, you know, so always be on the lookout for complementary people that, could potentially make, be your co-founders in the future. And there's no better time to kind of connect with people than in school, in my opinion. Then beyond that, right? You have you have your team, you have something that is interesting and you would love to build. The next critical steps is how do you get the business off the ground? In my opinion, you know when you're starting a business, you have to do things that don't scale, right? So as opposed to thinking and saying, oh, how do I get 50,000 customers? Or how do I get, 100 businesses on the platform? Just focus on that first one, right? Focus on that first customer, focus on that first 10. And it's okay to do things that don't scale. Like that is the only way you can get these businesses off the ground. Not everyone has access to capital when you're just getting started. So doing unscalable things is, the right way to go. And from a venture capital perspective, I can't talk about like other funds, but for Microtraction, there are a few things that we care about. And if your business sort of has a bunch of these things, then you're probably like 50 to 70%, on your way to raising funds. So number one is, we hardly fund solo founders, right? So you want to have between 2 to 3 co-founders. Ideally, the equity is split evenly between all team members. Number two, in that co-founding group, one person must be technical, because if you outsource, most likely the first version of your product, is not going to be right. Even for Bundle, we launched with a particular design, and within a couple of, Leke can attest, in a couple of months or a couple of weeks, we revamped the main UI, and we'll probably revamp it, probably in 2021 or something. And so if you're outsourcing development, you would spend so much money, and it's just not very sustainable. Number two is you want to make sure your product has been built. For every 100 people with ideas, there's one person that's built a product, right? So if you can build your product, that sets you apart from the remaining 99. If you can get a couple of customers, then you're even of a rare breed, right? So we always say, have your founding team, build your product, get some customers. And the final thing that a lot of people don't think about is, as a venture capitalist, you invest in businesses that can return your entire fund, right? So if I invest in 10 companies, one of them will return the entire investment of the last last 9, or remaining 9. So with Microtraction, we have 20 investments, and there are a bunch of companies that are not going to be successful, some of them that are kind of not really growing, but we have like about 4 or 5, and one particular one that has, is now worth almost $60-something million. And so when we're looking at these deals, we're like, okay, if these guys execute against their vision, how big can this company be, right? And big in Africa, in my opinion, is north of $100 million in valuation, which means the company should be able to make about $25 million in revenue at scale, which is no mean feat, right? Like very few startups, are making even $1 million, talk less of making, 20x that. But interestingly enough, like you don't necessarily need to be making $25 million in revenue to exit at 100 million. Like, a bunch of these startups that are valued at, 50, 100, 200 are on way less revenues than that. So yeah, those are kind of like the key things. And I would open the floor up for questions. If you have any questions, you can kind of just drop, your questions in the chat. I can see some people are doing that already. So there's Clinton, and Clinton has dropped 2 questions. Okay, so yeah, anyone has any questions, you can drop them in. And it could be anything, right? It could be pretty much anything, whether it's tech or finance, about bundle, about microtraction, um, something personal. I'm an open book. Okay, so how do I know when I'm going wrong in my enterprise, and how do I have effective and good customer relations? So I think the simplest way is just how many customers do you have, right? If you've built a product and you don't have any customers, or you can't retain any customers, then something is wrong somewhere. And the way to solve that problem is to talk to your customers. So in the earliest days, you want to be as, I think, I don't know who mentioned on the call, but someone said something about the fact that if you're building a startup in uni, and your audience is university students, it means you have very good proximity to your customers. So speak to them and ask them, why aren't you using my product? Why have you churned? What do you wish we did differently? What will you change about the product? And you will learn a lot. And for customer relations, in my opinion, again, it's just open communications and transparency, and making sure you exist on every possible channel that a customer will expect you to be on, right? So whether it's social media, email, um, in-app, help centers, but essentially, I think the most important for customer relations is to just always talk to your customers and be very transparent and treat each customer like like an individual. How do you get into tech? What motivates you to keep being in tech? So I think I touched on that earlier. So personally, yeah, I got into tech whilst I was in uni, but dropped out because I wanted to focus on tech, and I didn't think that medicine was the right path for me. I still had like 3 years to go, so whenever I think back, I'm just like, wow, if I compare where I am today and where I was 3 years ago, I'm always happy that I saved those 3 years, because like that's a big difference. So 3 years ago today, I was just starting Microtraction. I had not done anything with Binance, and definitely wasn't doing bundle. And yeah, that's a long time ago. What motivates you to keep being in tech? Personally, what drives me is Africa's economic development. Every business I invest in, every business I start, is always around that. With Bundle, we genuinely believe that digital assets and cryptocurrencies would allow more Africans to, reach economic freedom and prosperity. And we want to make this technology mainstream. So I do tech because I believe that is one of the levers to accelerate Africa's transition into a developed economy. Were you close to giving up in your first few years? If I'm being honest, no, because I think one of the things I told myself was I have to trust the journey. Um, there have definitely been times when it kind of felt like I wasn't happy with the progress I'd made in my life. Um, like when I go into tech, I read all the books, I'd read about Facebook, I read about Twitter, and you kind of feel that, oh, that should be you, you know. But the truth is that like those stories are exceptions. And for every Mark Zuckerberg, there are 100 and 1,000 James Elliots that we don't know. So the advice I always give any young entrepreneur or anyone getting into tech is trust your journey, trust the process. People will see Paystack now and be like, wow, this guy's cashed out, blah, 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 blah. But Shola and Ezra have paid their dues. They did so many things before Paystack. Shola is in his mid to late 30s. There's a blog post that Ezra wrote in 2015 as Paystack was getting off, and you can see the disappointment in his, in terms of the progress that is made in life, right? So, I think just understand that it's a journey, and trust the journey, and focus on improving your skills and meeting the right people. What's your take on Agritech? So Agritech is really interesting. I was extremely bullish on a bunch of the crowdfunding platforms in a couple years ago. But over time, I've kind of realized that that feels more like fintech than Agritech, because crowdfunding capital is the same thing that, or like pulling capital is the same things that PiggyVest and Cowrywise and all those guys do. The difference is PiggyVest or Cowrywise invest money into treasury bills, and these Agritech platforms give your money to farmers and give you a return on that. Agritech is I don't think we've kind of like really unlocked the full potentials yet. And I think about, so I'm not sure we have like a model Agritech business yet. And it's a bit disappointing. But the areas I'm really interested in have to do more with mobility, warehousing, off-taking, and aggregation of supply to match demand in cities. But I've not really seen anyone do anything in that regard that I'm excited about. Oladapo, what's your advice for hardware startups? It's difficult with operations of, I've come close to funding a couple of hardware startups in the past, but never really pulled the trigger. And it's a real challenge. That's just because, hardware is very different from software, and I'm not sure there are many investors in Nigeria or Africa that get hardware. And typically when I say hardware company, I just connect them to an investor and two investors I know that are not based in Nigeria that are interested in hardware. But essentially it requires, a lot more resources to get off the ground. And, even when you get the products right, then you still have to deal with things like logistics, customs, production. So my advice to anyone who is serious about hardware in Nigeria would probably be, it's a long shot, but I would probably say try and work in any of the hardware startups that exist in Nigeria, Africa today, whether it's remotely or you will learn a lot more from working in those organizations than starting one off yourself, because it's very challenging. But don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, because what do they know? You know better. Do you have a better leverage screen abroad compared to someone's screen in Nigeria? Like, the impact your network to progress you made so far in tech? I'm not 100% sure about that, to be honest. I think there was a time in the ecosystem whereby people paid a premium on the fact that you schooled abroad. I don't think that exists anymore. That was during the peak of when Konga and Jumia were the kind of leading tech companies today. Majority of the team at Bundle, schooled on the ground. Leke works with me, and he's still in uni, and I always said that I didn't realize Leke was still in uni when he applied to Bondo, and I found that afterwards, and I was like, man, he's done so well. So like, I'm not going to kind of change my mind. So in my opinion, actually, like, I'm personally more impressed when you schooled in Nigeria, and it's clear that you've a lot of the stuff that you know today is self-taught, right? Like, and you really pushed yourself. Like, it shows more determination, it shows more gut. And I'd rather hire you than some other person that just thinks, oh, I have a UK degree, so I'm better. Like, that would not get you anywhere. Aside technical skill, what else should the board entrepreneur look for in a co-founder? In my opinion, I would say complementary skills, not just technical skills. So if you're non-technical, then yes, you want to have a technical co-founder and vice versa. So aside complementary skills, you know, I call this the social test. Like, you're going to spend a lot of time with this particular individual or group of individuals. So if you guys don't get along and you don't know how to resolve differences in opinion, you're going to struggle, right? So you want to make sure that you actually really like the person, you have complementary personalities, and you have a history of resolving differences in the past. Okay, so I'll take these last two questions and I got to wrap. My question about copywriting content. What's your take? I mean, what's your advice on it? That's a very broad, it's a very broad question, Ajara. But in the context of kind of like startups, I think more and more companies are beginning to understand the importance of content and copywriting. We have someone at Bondo who essentially is like comms manager and handles like all forms of copywriting and content. And I think you would see a lot more companies realize that this is something that is needed. It would initially be within the tech ecosystem, but begin to spread towards more traditional businesses over time. So if you find it interesting, hone your skills. Better yet, right? Like, the beauty of something like content writing or copywriting is that you don't have to limit yourself to just local companies, right? Like, I think everyone should actually figure out how they can work remotely for like world class, or for global companies, because you just earn more. You earn more, and when the time is right, you find a local company that you love and allows you to continue to do what you're doing. So like with Bundle is a remote team. We have guys in Ibadan, we have guys in Ife, we have guys in Enugu, in Port Harcourt, we have guys in Ghana, and people in Lagos, right? So there'll be more and more remote opportunities, so take it. What's your take on running an electric vehicle company in Africa? If I'm being honest, I think it's incredibly challenging. I don't know if you guys saw that picture of a Tesla next to a generator in Nigeria, right? Like, we don't have the infrastructure for it at the moment, right? So one of the things I didn't even touch on as an entrepreneur is you have to really understand market timing. Paystack wasn't the first payment company. They won't be the last. But you want to ask yourself, like, why is the best time? So Bundle, for instance, we're not the first crypto company, but I don't think anyone has grown as fast as Bundle in 6 months. So we've caught up to companies that were 3 years in the making, 2 years in the making, and we're ahead, or we're twice as large as them. So timing is extremely important. So even if I think an electric vehicle company can work in the future, but for now you will struggle against localized infrastructure. What can emerging e-commerce platform do different in Nigeria? Marketplace or entry base? What is your peak? So I think you should always do asset light personally, because like right now, I think a lot of investors are just scared about e-commerce, right? Like someone comes to me and says, I'm doing an e-commerce business. I'll be like, what do you know that Konga or Jumia don't know? And they've actually transitioned more into sort of like asset-light businesses. I'm extremely interested in social commerce. I think a lot of commerce happens on a peer-to-peer basis on places like WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, and made an investment in that space. Extremely challenging to build anything around that, but you have to kind of have an angle, something that allows you to be differentiated, but also defensible from some of the larger, well-capitalized players in the space. But yeah, I think those are all the questions. I'll pass the mic back to Prince Will. Thanks for having me, guys, and hopefully this was useful.
All right, thank you very much, Yele. That was an amazing session. Thank you very much. A lot of insights to pick up from. I'll just quickly do like a recap and then hand over to Clinton. Part of the things you mentioned was optimize for skill sets, optimize for lessons as student founders, connect with potential co-founders, team members while you're still in school, sort of like develop a social relationship, so to say, with your team members and co-founders, because you basically will spend a lot of time with these guys. And I'm sure a lot of other people picked up a couple of other interesting nuggets from the session. Thank you very much. So I'll hand over to Clinton now.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really enjoyed this session. It's more of like a personalized experience, like really got value. So we really honor your observing your things, opinions, and then we share for future events like this. We'll still be able to reach out to you. So really big serious. So thanks everyone for coming on. We appreciate you. So we're going to play this session. So it's going to be like more of recordings that you can always refer to whenever you need to get insights on the startup. So it's going to be archived. Everybody will have access to it publicly. So yeah, so it's a nice for actually. Thanks yeah. So yeah, everyone, thanks for sharing. Thanks. If you still have any questions, you can drop the chat in the chat section or mail us. Either way, you can mail us in contact at SparkHub Nigeria. I'm going to stop it now.
Thank you very much, Clinton, and thank you, Prince Will. So I think we've come to the end of the session, and if you have any more questions, you can push it out. We also have a community WhatsApp group. We also have a community our social media handle at Startup Grind Ife. So before we close the meeting, I just want to announce that we are starting a newsletter starting from next week, like a weekly newsletter that we'll be pushing out. It's going to be chronicling all of in Yele Ife and the environment. So we're going to be pushing out opportunities. We're going to be pushing out events and happenings around. So I want you guys to look out for the newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter. Yeah. So you guys should, once you register for this event, you automatically subscribe to the newsletter. And we're also going to be having more activities, more events coming up. So as you get the event notification, please do well to register for this event. So thank you very much, everyone. And I think we've come to the end of the event. Yeah. See you later. Bye.
Bye.